repressurizing a expansion vessel, which is this red painted lump of metal. We're going to go through all the procedures, who can, who can't, the specialist tools that you're going to need to protect the boiler and to protect yourself, and we're also going to cover how much this should cost. But most importantly, this cover must not be removed unless you are gas safe registered or you work for somebody who's gas safe registered and you have an ACS certificate, because this is a very complicated and highly skilled piece of repairs, and only people trained in this should actually contemplate on repressurizing or replacing the expansion vessel. But don't forget, if you can subscribe to our channel and have a look at our other adult videos and on Facebook as well, well, we would be very happy. So let's have a look at the next section, which is going to be preparing the job. And then after that, we're going to cover through the other components that need to be done. So let's move over. Before we can begin any of these repairs, the first thing that we always have to do is to read the manual, the service manual installation service, to make sure that we understand the method of draining down, because they will vary from boiler to boiler, firm to firm. And more importantly, how to fill it and vent it, because obviously that's going to be very crucial before we can hand over the appliance. So the first test that we're going to have to do is safe isolation. So we can use our multimeter as we do across live and neutral and make sure it's dead. And of course, we have our safety probe that we've covered in another video. So don't forget to subscribe to our channel and see more of our lovely adult videos, as I call them, about safe isolation. The next thing that I'd like to talk about is protecting the PCB and everything down here. And as you can probably see, cling film. Very useful to wrap around here as much as possible. The next thing we're going to need is a towel, a nice large towel to tuck underneath here, because there will be water splashing for a certainty. Also, a good kitchen roll might be useful, so we can put a couple of squares on here on top and lay that underneath here just to absorb a few. And we will definitely need to replace the automatic air vent, and with F2 or X200 they tend to foam up, so if your automatic air vent is inside the boiler, which many are, you will get lots and lots of foam, and that needs to be absorbed with kitchen roll, something absorbent. So let's move over to the next stage, which is going to be the draining down part and the isolation. To repressurize the expansion vessel, we need to understand what it's doing in there and why. So this lump of metal, sprayed either red or silver, is there to take up the water that, when it gets cooked, expands. And a very simple experiment is this. If you get a bottle of plastic bottle here and it's finished with milk, we flush it out with water and recycle it. But if we was to put hot water into here, this would blow out completely, and this is just hot water from the tap. So you don't take my word for it, don't do it, because it's not safe. But just trust me, hot water expands. That expansion has to go somewhere. Well, if we have the top off, it goes into the atmosphere, and that's not a problem. But inside a Combi boiler, that's a very large problem and inherently dangerous. So it's important to find out that the correct pressure is in here to push back the water side. In the middle of that is this welded part, and there's a membrane, or some people call it a diaphragm. And it's quite fat. And the purpose of it is that as the water side here gets hotter and hotter, the air side here pushes it back, and that allows the pump to send the heat through the heat exchanger out to the system as quickly and efficiently as possible. But eventually the air will be pushed out by all of the water in all of the radiators and the pipes, because water is the strongest force on the planet, and a little drop of air in here is not a problem at all. So as we've done with other videos that you can see that we've got done on YouTube, make sure that before the boiler is hung on the wall, you test the pressure and make sure it's exactly equal with the filling pressure. That's absolutely crucial. But after a year or so, that water will press against the membrane and actually empty the air side. And the first thing that you may notice is that the gauge is dropping, and the customer will automatically top it up because that's what they've been told. It should be 1 bar pressure, and that puts more pressure on the membrane to push whatever air is left out even further, and they top it up again. Of course, that's the correct method. If you've got a drop in pressure, you top it up. But this is the first part of this collapsing. After that, and there's no more air left in here, it's going to find an exit. And that exit is called the automatic air vent. And as you can see here on the picture, here's one that's really been leaking and venting, leaking and venting until it's blocked itself up. And then the gauge will start to go up and up and up. And then finally, one of these red things called the pressure relief valve, a PRV, will then open as soon as that pressure gauge gets to anywhere near 3 bars. And there's the danger. So we have to come along and then just reset it. One of the most popular faults that installers ever make is that they go to a boiler and there's 1.5 bar or something. They'll take the cap off, they'll press the button and water pours out. And they'll say, right, your expansion vessel, diaphragm, whatever is broken, you need a new vessel or a new boiler, or all hell will break out. That's completely false and wrong. We have to have a method of actually testing the expansion vessel, and I'm going to show you the next stage. So I've read the manual, and as all of them will say, the first thing you have to do is, obviously we've isolated the electrics, is to turn off the flow and return isolators, because we don't want to drain down the whole house and spend hours on end. So make sure that you understand the drain offs, and what you'll need is maybe a plastic hose or several plastic hoses to connect to the isolating valve, and it starts on the return where the pump is. So on Combis, the return is always on underneath the pump. So we're going to put this underneath it, or maybe it's a thinner one, etc. So most breakdown engineers will have a selection, including garden hose, which tends to be the right one for Worcester boilers because they're quite large aperture. So we've always got 2 meters at least of all the different sizes that the shop sells, and the ironmongers is where we normally go to. Yeah. So we're going to turn off the valves here, attach this hose pipe to the return, and let that boiler drain down. Once it's drained down completely, I'm going to put this on the flow side of it and drain that down. Now, some manufacturers may say, before you drain down, put the motor into the diverter valve motor, that is, put it into the middle, for example. So that's why it's always crucial to make sure you read the instructions on draining down, as I said previously. So we're going to drain down on the return, then on the flow, and then close that off, and then we're going to drain down on the return again and leave the hose attached to the open drain off point, and that water, everything else will be nice and empty, so minimum water leakage is what we're trying to aim for. So the first thing that we're going to do is, when we open up that cap, is not to touch it, because we need tools. So I'll show you the tools that you need before we continue. So let me run through some of the tools that you're going to need to repressurize this vessel. Most importantly, a really good foot pump. Don't buy the cheap souvenirs. This is a really good one, and it's just £15 from my corner shop car accessory outlet, as it were, etc. But so large piston means it's going to be easier for me to pump up. The gauge I'm not interested in at all. Don't use this. This is quite often not good enough. The gauge that we use is a very simple, ordinary car tyre gauge. Hopefully, if you can get it in bars or kilograms, that makes life easier. But 1 bar pressure is 15 psi. So that's nice and easy to remember. So you need one of these. You're going to need a screw driver to replace that Schroder valve. We're going to replace 3 parts here. The Schroder valve, as I just mentioned, the automatic air vent, because that's, as we saw, filthy, and we're going to replace the pressure relief valve as well, because you can guarantee that if this boiler's been pumping out through the PRV, we obviously can't reset it. We're going to replace it because we're not in the repair business. And what I have is, as a breakdown engineer, I had a box similar to this, and it would be full of assorted automatic air vents. 1/2 inch BSP, 3/8, the one that goes in with a circlip or an O-ring, whatever. I'd have a whole load of these, so whichever boiler I went to, I've got it with me. And then I'd have another box with PRVs, pressure relief valves. Again, male iron to copper, O-ring, iron to this or that, whatever. I'd look at all the different boiler manufacturers as I went to them and had a little look, took a photograph, and then I got myself 2 or 3 of these, and I'd have a box full of those, which saves an awful lot of time, because there's nothing special about these. They're not generic. They can fit any boiler as long as it's specified, which they will be. But the thing is, as a breakdown engineer, I do not want to be going from the house to a merchant for one part to move on. So always prepare yourselves with components. The next thing we're going to need is a method to remove. So this is called a Schroder valve removing tool. I'll do some close-ups so you can see a little bit better. And this is another one. Sometimes it's different colors in that respect. You're also going to need a new Schroder valve. And one tip I can give you is, if you go to a tyre changing company, go to several, maybe take a packet of sweets or something to trade and say, can I swap this bag of sweets for a handful of those Schroder valves, because they're exactly the same as a car tyre. So they recycle them, or they chuck them in the bin. They are supposed to be recycled, but you know, we don't know that. But you know, if they can give you a handful of those, that would be lovely. Also, you can buy a kit, and this is for those awkward installations where the expansion vessel's at the back of the boiler and awkward to get to. You can have one of these extensions. This is a short one, and there are longer ones. And the firm that sells those is this one here, my mates at HTS. So check their website out. There's lots of spares and tools that you can buy from them for breakdowns. So they're absolutely brilliant firm. So it's HTS, www.probably.co.uk, whatever. Okay, so these are the basic things that you're going to need to do. So we're next going to start checking the pressure and then resetting it. So now is the first time I'm going to remove the cap and put it away, and I want to see if there's any residual air left in this side of the membrane. So I'm going to put the cap on here, and there is a little bit, and then water's coming out. So all I need to do now is to pump out the rest of that condensation water. So we'll simply put it on. We'll put a few pumps in here, and we'll pump it up, and give it maybe 30 seconds, whatever it takes, until maybe you're bored a little bit. But basically what you're going to do is it's going to stop. You can't put any more air in. So we'll remove this, put our gauge on and it's high pressure and water is pouring out. And I asked these 12 engineers for 18 years, is that a problem? And they say, yeah, your diaphragm split. Quite normal, we've seen it on YouTube. It's the wrong answer. If that diaphragm membrane had a hole in it, there's no way I can pump it up because it's going through that and out through the drain off. So obviously the diaphragm must be solid. The mere fact that I stopped is proof that the membrane is perfect. So all I need to do now is to empty it completely with my Schroder valve tool. Now this is available from definitely Halfords. Most car accessory corner shops normally sell these, but every single bicycle shop should sell these as well, and they've got valves in little packs that is available with this if you don't want to get it from HDS or the tyre place, as I said. So we're just going to remove that one, put the new one in, and then we're going to pump it up for the last time to 1 bar, which is what this house needs because it's a 3-bedroom semi or smaller. If it's a larger house than 3 bedrooms, it's going to need 1.4. 1.4, 1.4. Smaller house, 1 bar, 1 bar. It is crucial that these two pressures start off at the same amount of pressure. Then finally, once we finish doing that, we need to now fill it up. But before we can do that, we have to test the valve, and we use this, leak detector fluids. So we'll just take it out, shake it a bit, spray it on the top and make sure it's not leaking, which it should be because it's brand new. But that's what we use, leak detector fluid. Otherwise, the old-fashioned way used to be washing up liquid. You just put a drop and make sure it came down, but you could dislodge that because it sticks out. So this is the proper way, leak detector fluid, and it should be fine. Now we can put the dust cap back on, and we're down to the filling and the venting. So before we can do that, we need to replace our 2 parts. So the pressure relief valve is definitely going to be replaced because I don't want any iffy parts left behind, because this is hydraulics, and obviously the automatic air vent is going to be need changing. But we need to fill it with inhibitor. So I'll show you that bit next. The final stage before we start putting in the inhibitor is to flush the system out. So with the filling loop underneath, I'm going to turn it on to full and get that water to go right up here, and any dregs that might have been lurking at the bottom, especially around the back of the pump, hopefully will get flushed out. So just turn the mains on, let it drain out. Turn it on and let it drain out. And then finally, when that's done, we can remove the hose, close off the drain off point, and we can start introducing our inhibitor because we've changed the parts, they're all nice and new. So what I've done is, from the milk bottle, I've made a hole in the cap and screwed it here because, for example, your automatic air vent may be deep inside, and getting this bottle in the back is quite awkward, or even this small one is going to be quite awkward to pour it in. So this is what I've done. I've just cut a bit of the hose, put it into there, and now I can reach into the automatic air vent on top of the pump or at the top. Another tip that you could make is something like this. This is a 1/2 inch to copper BSP, and a short piece of copper tube or a longer one, and then where I can screw just an old automatic brass one, because they're all the same size, 1/2 inch BSP, and now I can put that there or that inside the boiler, and then I can pour my inhibitor into here to get in as much as possible. This is absolutely crucial, so don't skimp on this, because this is going to be the lifesaver of lubricating the pump, the domestic heat exchanger and everything else. It's F2 silencer or X200 silencer. That's going to do a world of good. but it's foamy. This is where, do you remember I said about the water paper that you need to put round there to remove that foam if it's round here and there? Because once we've finished doing that, then we're going to put the boiler through its paces, so we've refilled the way the manufacturer said, and then we're going to test it on the heating side, which is the normal side, to whoosh it round, and we'll get lots of foam bubbling out the automatic air vent, which we leave loose obviously to get the air out. Once that's happy and it's nice and quiet, if we need to, we'll top it back up to 1 bar. Now we turn on the hot tap to whoosh it around that side of the world, cough, splutter, foam, top it back up again, and this side is done. I will also check the gases while I'm here. I might as well check the high and low gas pressures, make sure that they're fine. This boiler is going to be so quiet, it's unbelievable, and the heating will zoom out there, and customers always said to me, it's never been that quiet. And it's the air that does it. It's the air that keeps the diaphragm in the middle, and that's the way that it should work. But remember, this may also collapse after about a year or so, 2 years, because that's normal. So the more radiators that are out there, and the bigger the radiators are, the more often this will have to be repressurized. And some boiler manufacturers now will say they want this doing every 12 months, whatever happens, which is a good thing. I agree with that, because this is a really good, crucial job that's absolutely necessary for the hydraulics to work efficiently. Now, when it comes to the price, the minimum you will pay for this is £160 to £200, depending on what parts you need and degree of difficulty and the length of time. But you should be at least £160, £180, £200 to repressurize this, which is highly recommended. So I hope you've enjoyed the video and something's come out of this. And once again, if you can subscribe to our fantastic channel, and on Facebook, we'd be happy to receive any questions that you may have on this particular job. Thanks for watching, and take care.